We're going to do something a bit different today. Instead of analyzing a particular aspect of Destiny 2 design, let's get our hands dirty. For anyone who follows my live streams, you'll already know that I am primarily a PVE player. But I am addicted to Trials of Osiris. I love entering Trials every week and trying to get that sweet 7-game flawless win streak for some of the best rewards Destiny 2 has to offer. But for a PvE main like me, I always wanted something like Trials for PvE. Now, of course, we have Grandmaster Nightfalls, but it's not really the same. GMs are solved. We know exactly how to win nearly 100% of the time by curating a loadout, learning spawns, safe positioning, and boss behaviors. Trials of Osiris is special in that you never know for sure if you're going to be flawless on any given card. You don't know what your opponents are going to run. You don't know how hard your games will be. You could be the best PvP player and still lose your flawless run. I want to have the same challenging and exciting experience in PvE. So let's take a look into what Trials of Osiris would look like if it was adapted into a PvE game mode. Hey everyone, I'm Rizeki and welcome to my design concept for PvE Trials of Osiris in Destiny 2. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. We do weekly Destiny 2 design videos and regular live streams here. So if you enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to be kept up to date on all our new content. This video is going to be a bit different from previous videos and is more about the design process rather than what we already have in the game. So if you have any ideas or thoughts of your own, let me know either in the comments down below or over in our Discord server. I'd love to hear what other Guardians want to see in a mode like this. But without further ado, let's jump right into it. We could start with the big concepts present in Trials of Osiris that make it as compelling as it is. At the top, we of course have the amazing loot. Unique adept weapons, ascendant shards, rare cosmetics, and more. I would argue that this is the biggest draw, as the adept trials weapons tend to be some of the best options in the entire game, whether that be for PvE or PvP. Notable examples are Igneous Hammer, Eye of Soul, and Reed's Regret, among others. Loot is a major contributor to players actually queuing into a playlist, so we should retain this in our design as well. Next up is the challenge. Trials requires players to achieve a win streak of 7 games, not losing a single game unless, of course, they are using a passage of mercy. Not only is this a clear goal for players to reach, but also is a great benchmark for how long it should take to complete the activity. In addition, it gives us an idea of how difficult our PvE activities should be. A couple important notes here is that players will not become flawless on every attempt. That is part of the challenge and ultimately the main competitive draw of the mode. Maintaining a challenging yet achievable goal like this is definitely something we want to keep in mind. Finally, we have the aspect of the unknown. You may have some idea of what the meta is in Trials, Wish Enders, the Immortal, Bubble Titan, but you will have no idea what exactly you'll encounter in any particular game. You don't even know what your teammates are running if you're solo queuing either. This makes things exciting and requires players to adapt to things they may not have expected. Surprising the player keeps things fresh and prevents them from becoming too bored of the mode. Okay. You probably want me to get to my idea now, so let's do it. This concept is going to draw from all the things that make Trials of Osiris engaging, while also drawing from activities we have already seen in Destiny. Some of you might already know where I'm going, especially based on the third thing I mentioned above. In the Year of Lightfall, we have had a number of really cool seasonal activities, namely Deep Dives, Savathûn's Spire, and the Coil. Each of these has not only been praised by the community for being some of the best seasonal activities we've seen in recent years, but also for the difficulty and the rewards. These 3 activities share something big in common. They're all roguelike experiences. For those of you who are unfamiliar with roguelikes, these are games that have random or procedurally generated content, giving players a slightly different experience each time they play. The Coil is probably the most similar to a real roguelike, since it has a number of levels to complete before reaching a boss, followed by a selection of buffs that change how you play, then back into another set of levels and a boss. Deep Dives are similar, where you gain a random choice of buff between each level. In both activities, you don't know exactly what you're going to be running into, or which buffs you'll be able to take advantage of in any particular run. Now, I know these activities aren't completely random and are more reliant on the weekly rotation, but this restriction is something that we can actually leave out of our new game mode. It's not required at all. With all that in mind, let me introduce you to what I'm going to call the Gauntlet, our PvE version of Trials of Osiris. At a surface level, this will be a roguelike game mode where players will need to complete 7 paths of increasing difficulty, just like in the Coil, to be given high tier rewards. It will also take place within the setting of the final shape, which will be important later in our design. Let's dig into exactly what this will entail. Having 7 paths to clear is a no-brainer. Trials of Osiris requires 7 wins to go flawless, so it's only natural to continue that trend. Trials of Osiris originally handled matchmaking by pairing you against players who had a similar win streak to your own, effectively making games more difficult as you progress through your card. To translate this to a PVE setting, we're going to make each path have scaling difficulty. Clearing a path will cause the next path to become more difficult. For example, path 1 could be normal difficulty, kind of what you would expect in a standard activity or something like a Vanguard strike. Clearing path 1 will bring you to path 2, increasing the difficulty to hero level or equivalent. Eventually, you will end on path 7, which will be probably Grandmaster equivalent difficulty. Clearing path 7 will mean you beat the gauntlet. So, how do we incorporate the rogue elements? Starting with paths, we could take inspiration from our setting. If set within the final shape, we would expect this activity to take place in the pale heart of the traveler. The biggest detail we know about the heart is that it formed from our memories and experiences while playing Destiny. Locations, bosses, enemies, all of these can become part of our paths. Imagine entering the gauntlet, fighting your way through Europa in path 1, defeating Aramis as the boss, then immediately traveling to path 2 to be confronted with Savathun's throne world and the unique enemies found there, like Lucent Hive. There are so many locations to draw from in Destiny's past that can be reintroduced in these paths. And you'll never know exactly what you'll get. It's random, after all. This keeps the mode fresh, and players will need to adapt to whatever location your path takes you to, similar to how Trials of Osiris matches you against players with unknown loadouts and playstyles. This could also be a great excuse for reprising old activities that were removed. Maybe make an encounter with the Forge, or bring back old bosses from a bygone era. Want to fight Gaul like in the conclusion of the Red War? Make him a boss fight option in a path. Reuse old lost sectors or missions. There's a lot of PvE content that can be repurposed, reused, or returned for a mode like this. It could give players fan favorite encounters that no longer exist in the game, or it could make use of lesser used content like nightmare hunts to help fill out the game mode roster. The other big rogue element that we need to include is, of course, upgrades and progression. I think being able to enter the gauntlet with a perfect loadout would make the activity trivial. Imagine bringing in a perfect Grandmaster loadout and you kind of just steamroll the entire activity until you get to the end. But what if you couldn't? Let's instead give players a blank slate. We want this to be a gauntlet after all. Choose your subclass options, but be given a set of white gear, weapons, and armor. Any drops from enemies could be equipped to upgrade your loadout. Taking from deep dives, we could also allow players to improve their armor after an encounter with options similar to Asa's gifts. Finishing a path should give players enough loot to bring their power level to be equal with the next path. So if path 1 starts you with white gear, you should have the equivalent of a green rarity loadout when entering path 2. By the time you make it to path 7, you should have a full legendary loadout, possibly with an exotic or two. Not only does the difficulty of this activity scale as you complete it, but you also scale in power as the activity progresses. This should allow the difficulty to be easier to balance for designers since all players start at the same base level. To succeed in the gauntlet, players will need to make the best of whatever loadout they find and use their knowledge of the game to make it through any tough challenges they find themselves in. If Trials of Osiris is about mastering PvP mechanics and skill, the gauntlet is about mastering PvE mechanics and skill. Random paths and random loadouts will mean that you may not be given the god loadout every run. Some runs you will absolutely dominate, and some runs you will of course struggle. This is the same as in Trials, since you never know exactly how your teammates will play, how strong your opponents are, etc. Some Trials cards are struggles, some are quick and easy, but it doesn't change the fact that it's a big accomplishment making it to the lighthouse. And the more you play, the better you play each time. Now we can talk about loot. Throughout the gauntlet, you'll naturally be collecting weapons and armor to bolster your loadout. So why not just let players take what they want out of the activity? Any loot found within the gauntlet can be kept, win or loss. Trials is similar, where you could earn loot by just playing the game. You don't need to go flawless in Trials to earn an immortal, but to earn the best loot, you need to go all the way. The Immortal Adept requires you to go flawless and is much stronger than the base version you earn by just playing. This will be the same in our gauntlet. Get through all 7 paths, and be rewarded with the best possible loot. Maybe it could include some unique adept weapons? The Coil has some insane rewards for attaining platinum, so there's no reason the gauntlet couldn't either. Some other ideas that I was tossing around was, for example, a parallel for pressure trials and deep dives. Maybe activating a pressure trial will make the current encounter much more difficult, but also increase the rewards earned after beating it. Strong players could take advantage of this to increase the consistency of their runs, or players could activate a pressure trial in an attempt to find a good loot drop to fix a poor loadout. I also thought it would be cool to give players a choice of path, and paths could reward players with loot based on their setting. Building a stasis loadout? Maybe picking the Europa path will have a high chance of giving you stasis weapons, stasis related exotic armor, or upgrades to your stasis subclass. This could help players target farm particular loot as well. Anything to help players tailor the experience to their liking is always good. Adding various options like this to tap into a player's knowledge of the PvE landscape would be great for testing a player's abilities in PvE. Players that have a strong PvE game knowledge will be rewarded highly, just like players with a strong PvP game knowledge will be rewarded highly in Trials of Osiris. Ultimately, the gauntlet would be a perfect testing ground for PvE players, making them think on their toes, and really putting their build crafting and combat skills to work. All in all, I wanted to create a concept for a mode that would provide the same things to PvE players that Trials of Osiris provides to PvP players. An activity that has a great challenge to overcome, with the reward of some of the best loot in the game. Give players something that is new, fresh, and different on every playthrough. An activity that draws inspiration from some of the best activities we've had in recent years, and also brings back old content in a new and memorable way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my concept. Let's get some brainstorming going in the comments. The best game design, of course, comes from many people all thinking together and discussing what makes something the most fun. Oh, and for any Bungie devs that may be watching, feel free to pass these ideas from the video over to the design team. I mean, I think this would be a pretty cool mode, so, you know, cool to see it in the game, just saying. But hey, maybe my concept is just something I want to see. Maybe it's not the best version of the idea. Let me know if you agree with my design or have your own thoughts down in the comments section below. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Oh, and don't forget to stop by our live streams here or on Twitch around 8:30 p.m. Eastern most weeknights if you want to talk about design live, or join us for viewer games. But I think that's all I've got for now. As always, I've been Rizeki, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.